also to examine how we move from ambition to implementation, how we unlock investment, strengthen partnerships, and ultimately deliver infrastructure that makes a meaningful change in the lives of our communities. We have excellent speakers and panels throughout the next 2 days, so I'm looking forward to those insightful conversations, and I know you will also be attending different panels, so it's going to be a jam-packed 2 days. My name is Claire Mawisa. I will be your program director and moderator for this session. To open this session on building Africa's
future, and is something I am very, very passionate about. Cape Town has an extraordinary geographic advantage. We sit on one of the world's major maritime routes at the southern tip of Africa. We have a diversified economy, strong agricultural and manufacturing base, a growing logistics sector, of course a major tourism industry, and increasingly strong connections to international markets, and a growing base for international tourist cruises. Our ambition is to make full use of all of these advantages. We want Cape Town to be Africa's economic powerhouse. We still have some way to go in that ambition, but we are on the right track. We want it to be the easiest place on the continent to do business. We are absolutely unequivocal in that ambition. It must be the easiest place in Africa to do business. Now, we are very, very close to achieving that. But if there are any people here from Mauritius, let me just warn you that we are coming for you. And we want to be a globally competitive port city, serving businesses in our city, our region, and across Africa. We want to be all of those things not just because we enjoy the competition. We do that. But because we are passionate about our higher purpose in Cape Town, which is getting people out of poverty and into work. And we know that the only way to do that is to have a much faster growing city economy. When the city economy grows faster, businesses come and people get into work. And that is why we say very emphatically here that when cities work, people work. All of this requires us to think about infrastructure in a different way, in a much more integrated way. A port depends on the city around it. Freight corridors must connect efficiently to producers and markets. Industrial and logistics development need access to land, electricity, water, and transport. Workers need reliable ways to get to work, while businesses increasingly depend on digital systems that allow goods and information to move effortlessly. For a port city, these pieces form part of the same value chain. That is why we've spent the past 5 years setting the benchmark for infrastructure investment ahead of the growth that we are experiencing as a city in Cape Town. We have said we do not want to just do the absolute bare minimum required to keep the city going. We see the pressure that all of South Africa's metros are under, the incredibly rapid pace of urbanization taking place in our country, and we have to keep ahead of that pressure. We have to move forward, not allow ourselves to slide backwards. And so we have deliberately set out to smash all records for infrastructure investment as a city government. Now, when I often speak with the Minister for Public Works and Infrastructure in South Africa, I realize that the numbers that we are talking about are relatively small compared to what some of the other people in this room are talking about. But at a city level, these are major record-breaking achievements. We have a major long-term program covering water and sanitation, our electricity grid, public transport, roads, and all other economic infrastructure. The purpose, again, is to ensure that Cape Town can accommodate the very rapid urbanization that we are experiencing, along with other metros, and can provide the foundation, the bedrock for a growing economy, a faster growing economy, which gives businesses the opportunity and confidence to invest and expand, and in turn, employ more people. However, there is one critical part of our economic infrastructure that needs to move forward with greater urgency, and that is central to our discussion today, the Port of Cape Town. Cape Town has the location and economic base to be a major global gateway. Yet, the performance of our port has for too long limited what our city and its businesses can achieve. Exporters need predictable access to international markets, manufacturers need reliable supply chains, and investors need confidence that the infrastructure supporting their operations will actually perform. That is why we have strongly welcomed, and do again here today, strongly welcome, the move towards greater private sector participation in the management and operations of the Port of Cape Town and all of South Africa's ports and harbours. Transnet's recent call for private sector partners to develop and operate key aspects of the port, including the multi-purpose terminal, is an important step in the right direction and an important opportunity to bring additional capital, expertise, and operational capabilities into the system. We believe that this will unlock more of the potential of the port, and we would like to see the process move forward as quickly as possible. I also do want to just say that it is, as I said, an important first step in the right direction, but we would like to see much more of the steps down that journey as well. We need to think about the entire journey of a product. It might begin on a farm far out. Our record-breaking investments in electricity, water, sanitation, transport, roads, and other infrastructure is intended to create a reliable platform for economic development. We want businesses to feel a sense of security and confidence that they can invest here. Again, because our ultimate purpose is to get more people into employment. And we will always work with them to unlock more partnerships with the private sector. This matters specifically at a time when governments face significant constraints on public finances. The fact of the matter is that the scale of infrastructure investment required across South Africa's cities calls for a different frame of mind. It calls for new kinds of partnerships with the private sector and calls for public investment creating the foundations that enable private capital to come in at greater scale. The same principle applies to industrial land and logistics development. That is why the development of one of the largest vacant and fallow pieces of land in the whole of Cape Town, the precinct known as Culemborg, and for those of you who were at the other session at the waterfront, you would have passed by it on your way here. This is so critical for our city's future. It is a truly enormous tract of undeveloped land adjacent to our CBD and adjacent to our port. In fact, it is the same size again as our entire existing CBD. Once developed into a modern intermodal logistics precinct supporting the Port of Cape Town and strengthening the city's freight network, it will fundamentally change the way our port and our city functions. It will contribute massively and meaningfully to economic growth in Cape Town. That development truly should have happened years ago. But the very next best time after years ago is right now. Digital infrastructure will be equally important. Cargo tracking, digital customs processes, and smart logistics systems can reduce delays and make supply chains much more predictable. African port cities have an opportunity to leapfrog older infrastructure models and built systems designed in other port cities and replace them with modern, much more efficient and much more connected infrastructure. This is the opportunity we see in Cape Town. We are doing our bit by investing in the wider city because we want to create an environment in which businesses can thrive, people can move, goods can be transported, and people again can get into work. Now we need the port to realize its full potential within that ecosystem. If Cape Town is going to move off of the bottom of the global port logs and compete with leading port cities around the world, we need to seriously up our game. Improve our efficiencies, improve our capacities, improve our ability to respond quickly as trade patterns and technologies change. And this is also where cooperation between cities becomes important. No African city operates in isolation. Our ports connect African producers and consumers to global markets, and stronger connections between African cities can expand those markets further. City leaders have an important role in sharing what works, developing partnerships, and allowing infrastructure and economic development to reinforce.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremony, Honorable Minister, Executive Mayor of Cape Town. First and foremost, thank you very much for inviting us. I know Walvis Bay is your little brother. We are sharing more in common, I know. Fellow main speakers, the panelists, distinguished guests, good afternoon. I'm honored to represent the municipality of Walvis Bay here today in Namibia. In my delegation, I came with the Chief Executive Officer of Walvis Bay Municipality, Ms. Victoria Kapenda, seated there. And I have also came with Head of Infrastructure, Mr. Theo Potgieter. He is also sitting there. Yeah,
developing states like our own South Africa and those of neighboring countries around us? And how do we then stack up those competing priorities? So, a very warm welcome to all my panel guests this afternoon. Yes, sir. Pardon?
I am a person with disability.
Yes.
I have one leg, so I've been seated for long.
Yes.
I would love to make my address while standing.
Okay. All right. All right.
I was told I was supposed to give just a note,
Okay.
not on a pad.
Not on a panel. That is not a problem, sir. We will.
Allow me just speak on the podium.
Okay. So I'm going to open with you as part of the conversation today. And I'm going to allow you, as Mayor of Kampala, in a city that is growing, a city that is investing, and a country that's also investing in new infrastructures, finding new ways to develop as well as finance that. And you've obviously seen the importance of building connectivity within your own country and with it, economic hubs and activity that comes with that. And if you can kindly give us a reflection on the Ugandan experience to date and what it has meant for an economic hub and a capital city much like Kampala is to invest in your aerotropolis and rather your aviation space and the impact of that against all of the different pillars of governance that you work in.
I wish to appreciate, does this work okay? My name is Ronald Balimwenzo. I'm the Lord Mayor of Kampala City. Kampala, the economic hub of Uganda, with over 1.98 night population and over 4.5 million people working in Kampala, living in Kampala, and depending on Kampala. It's a privilege for me to be part of this symposium and to discuss a very pertinent and transformation issue. Digital airports, logistics, and the digital trade for our cities. Unfortunately, Kampala as a city has challenges. One of the biggest is that we spend over 240,000 man-hours in jam because of connectivity. And therefore we lose over 10 trillion Uganda shillings every year because of jam, because of lack of logistics and digital trade. So African cities must be better connected to one another, to global markets and digital economy. Modern airports. Unfortunately, in Uganda, we only have one key airport. That's Entebbe International Airport. We don't have an airport in the city. And therefore, it's not a system that we have adopted. We are constructing one in Hoima, and it's the only that we have because of the oils. We recently got oil in Hoima, and because of that, constructing an airport. Modern airports and efficient logistics systems are therefore not simply transport infrastructure. They are economic infrastructure. They are people. They move people, goods, capital, knowledge, and opportunities. We must therefore, as Africans, invest in integrated transport. Uganda, as a country, has not done much in investing in transport. And therefore, we are looking for investors to invest first in public transport, because I told you that we lose over 240,000 productive time in jam. And that's a lot of time lost in jam. So we need investors to invest in modern airports, efficient logistics, and public transport, BRT, metro, and so forth and so on. We must create corridors that link airports, ports, roads, railways, and urban centers while removing unnecessary barriers to the movement of goods across our borders. At the same time, digital transformation must enable seamless payments, electronic documentation, e-commerce, and data-driven trade. For Kampala and Uganda, this vision is important. Our city can serve as a gateway connecting East Africans to the continent and the wider world. But no African city can succeed in isolation, and therefore we need to work with partners, with sister cities, in making this vision be realized. Our goal must be an interconnected African market where goods can move faster, business can trade using digital systems, and people can access opportunities across borders. This can be possible if we implement the African continent free trade areas. Let us therefore build infrastructure that connects, technology that empowers, and policies that enable. Africa does not merely need to participate in the global economy. Africa must build infrastructure and systems to become one of its great economic hubs. I now come to your question. I am sorry I had been informed a little late that I have a presentation. I want you to give me again your question so that I can now be clear on what I have to give you.
All right. Please can you give us insight into how the development of infrastructure around the airports and connectivity in terms of your aerotropolis and economic hub development in Kampala has impacted the city's growth as an economic hub, as well as assisted Uganda specifically in it being a main city and a main economic hub in achieving some of its imperatives related to trade, related to the movement of goods and services, related to transport development the country over, as well as related to labor and the activity that comes from that within your economy.
Hello. It's a hard one. Kampala, like I did tell you, our road infrastructure, our transport system is not the best. It isn't. And we have jam. We have a lot of jam in the city. We lose, like I did tell you, over 240,000 man-hours every day. Recently, I was interacting with some of the investors to give us light train, mass transport in the city so that we can better create connectivity. We have one single road from Entebbe, the only airport that we have, to Kampala. And Kampala is kind of central. It connects to other districts. So Kampala is the hub. But our roads are still wanting. In Kampala, we have 210 kilometers of road network. But only, I want to emphasize this, only 30% is paved. 30% is paved. And majority of them have outlived the design life. So you can now imagine the jam that we have. We have no single light train. We have no metro. We have nothing. We have no BRT system. And that's what we want to create. I'm a newly elected mayor, and I want to see that we have a system that is economically viable, a system where we shall be leaving our cars home, be able to come to the city, utilizing little money, You drive from Entebbe, which is about 32 kilometers, to Kampala, and you spend about 3 hours in jam. So you can now imagine, you are an investor coming to invest in Uganda, and you spend about 3 hours for a distance of 32 kilometers. So we have a challenge. And that's the reason that I call upon you people to come and take opportunities in Uganda, particularly the Kampala capital city, which I lead as Lord Mayor now. There are great opportunities in both mass transport and digital systems. We want to adopt digital systems in the city because with digital systems, you are quickening services. At the same time, you're combating corruption, which is a disease to most of our cities, you know. So we want digital systems. They are faster, and at the same time, you fight corruption. So I am newly elected, and I want to invite all of you to take an opportunity. We are still virgin, we're still green, and there is a great opportunity. There is a great opportunity for investors to take on Kampala, the capital city, the economic hub. We generate over 70% of the local revenue for the entire country. Yes, 70%. We recently created new districts, new cities, 10 in number, in a way of decongesting Kampala. But it has not worked. So we have also opportunities in investing in new cities so that we have connectivity. How I wish to invite you. You know, your question was a little hard that I had to turn round and round and forth to. So that is that. I don't know whether there is another question to that effect.
I think you've actually answered us adequately, because by also telling us what the challenge is, you've gone to the nub and the heart of this conversation,
Yeah.
Honorable Mayor, in the sense that there is a cost related to not having infrastructure,
Yeah.
or infrastructure that is not responsive to the demands of the environment that it finds itself in. And I think very much a lot of this conversation and where it wants to go today is how do we bridge those gaps? And how do we close those shortcomings in design, in practice, in policy and governance, much like you've also said within the context of our local governments as well? And how do we accelerate the speed of delivery? Because that then also accelerates the numbers you're speaking about in relation to the importance of Kampala, for instance, as an African economic hub. It accounts for so much of trade in your GDP in your country alone. But if the one impediment to continued growth for your country is just that 3 hours backwards and forwards on a daily basis to the main airport, we all have to begin to question how that ripple effect doesn't just affect Uganda, but even how you're able to actively trade, do business, and connect with other platforms, people, and activity with your neighboring countries, all the way through to us here in South Africa. So absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly the message we are here to
But I'd like to ask this of us in this forum, which, like one of the mayors said, we should not end it here. Cities are the heartbeat of our countries.
Yes.
They're the heartbeat, the economic hubs. And therefore, we should be seen to invest in them. By Uganda losing over 240,000 man hours of productive time, which is about 10 trillion, millions of US dollars lost in productive time because of jam. We should leave this place with a declaration, perhaps, to invest of the infrastructure and climate financing. 30% should go to the cities because they are the economic hub. And therefore, we should not be seen to frustrate them. By us investing lots of money in infrastructure development, particularly transport infrastructure, we shall have done a great deal. So I request that we make a declaration that all infrastructure development financing, we invest 30% of that in cities and municipalities for them to be able to remove that big gap. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mayor of Kampala and the Honorable Mr. Balimvezo. If I can now welcome to the podium, just to give his opening remarks in line with the protocol, Mr. Nkosing Pindile Kagaza, who is the Executive Mayor of the city of Ekurhuleni in South Africa. Now, Ekurhuleni, ladies and gentlemen, what we tend to do, much like people say, "Get out, Devon," and they are in Balito, which is in Ilembe district municipality, Kwaduhuza, is that when we land at Oratambo, we say we're in Joburg. We're actually in Ekurhuleni municipality before we cross a border and we enter the city of Johannesburg. So the city of Ekurhuleni, much to the sentiments of our first speaker, is pivotal to South Africa. It is the literal aerial gateway to the country and the biggest economic hub on the continent. So a very warm welcome to you, Executive Mayor. And the same question to you. A huge amount of investment has been made. The SOEs involved in our Aerotropolis, the SEZ development in Ekurhuleni.
Yep.
But Ekurhuleni has also not been a municipality where things have gone smoothly, particularly in recent years, where we are looking at a myriad of service delivery and governance lapses that may in fact impede on competitiveness and even its ability to attract ongoing investment and confidence from investors and practitioners in terms of the ongoing development that's still needed to that SEZ and that Aerotropolis space. Please can you give us some insights about how the SEZ, the Aerotropolis in Ekurhuleni, continues to contribute to the economy of that space and region? And as we face these challenges, what we should still look to as green shoots. Earlier on, it was referred to as Kampala is virgin territory. Ekurhuleni is territory that's a little bit weathered, but has green shoots nonetheless that we need to look at because, as I've pointed out, it is not a region we as a country can afford to die as our gateway. Over to you.
No, thank you very much, Program Director, and we want to greet my colleagues. I see all the mayors, they are here. I see the mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, the deputy mayor of Johannesburg, and of course the mayor of Kampala in Uganda. And I thank you. Or rather, Ekurhuleni is the home to the OR Tambo Airport, which is the busiest airport in South Africa, in SADC, and we can argue and say in Africa, and we are a host to 4.2 million population. We are one of the three major metros in Gauteng province. We are the manufacturing hub of the country. If you're looking for blue collar where production lines are, you come to Ekurhuleni. And really, we are appreciative of being a home to the OR Tambo Airport. In South Africa, the airports are owned by the national government through AXA. So development of airports are driven from AXA, but of course, because we are the municipality where the airport is based, we take a keen interest in the development of the airport. And that is why we've then developed an Aerotropolis master plan, a 30-year Aerotropolis master plan, which then articulates and guide the development around the airport. So Aerotropolis is nothing else but airport economy. The fact that we've got the the airport, it is an asset that we want to leverage our growth and development on. So it's not just the airport, but we've got the major highways that are crossing our city, whether it's the N3, whether it's R21, whether it's N17, whether it's N12. And there's a capability that we are looking at in terms of movement of goods and services, in terms of movement of the people. And that's how we sell then our city to potential investor to say, whatever that you, whether it's high-tech, whether it's agro-processing, whether we are doing roses, flowers. You can package them at the airport. I mean, around the Guruleni tomorrow, they are sold in the streets of Paris, still fresh. And that's a strength of connectivity. And that is why we then invested a lot of time in developing this Electropolis master plan. And we transport over 21 million passengers that transit. Well, a bit of regress because of COVID and the impact on airline and all that. But we have seen now that traffic is coming back. And we look at those people even from a point of tourism to say, do we have enough tourism products? Do we have enough hotels? It's not just hotel, but we have products. We have something to do. Just recently we hosted a golf and tourism convention where we're having a conversation, in fact, focusing on Africa. Do we have enough, golf developed, fairways, and all the related amenities to drive economy and all that. So we're looking at those conversations to say, have we invested enough? And how long do tourists stay in the city of Ekurhuleni before they go elsewhere? They stay, studies, they say they spend 1 day, then they go, they are in Sun City, they are in the Kruger. But we want to keep them within the city, but we need to develop a tourism, products. We had a conversation about Disney Africa. Across the world, there's so few Disneys. But if we've got an airport, we've got a land, we should be able to, get investors to develop a Disney so that we can keep, tourists in Ekurhuleni. And that is basically just looking at it from the movement of the people. But we also look at it from, the movement of goods, the movement of services. One unique capability that we're developing is the data center. We're now the home of data center, whether it's Terraco, whether they're actually putting up huge investment into our space. And it's because of this connectivity. An engineer can fly into our city. You can go and check how your systems, whether they are well kept, and tomorrow you are back. So it is a unique capability that we're looking at developing, and that is where the Electropolis master plan articulates. It then says, what type of infrastructure do we have to put up today in order to support this vision that in 30 years we should be able to achieve, this Electropolis vision? Do we have enough water infrastructure? That is why we've been investing over 1.2 billion in the security of water supply, ensuring that we've got the reservoirs, we've got, to supply, the industry. And as I've indicated, Henneken, I'm making this example. Well, I don't know whether I'm breaking any protocols. Coca-Cola, these are established brands, but they are found in Ekurhuleni, and their production line, they run 24/7. To just produce amarula, which is enjoyed across. Wherever you go in the duty-free, you can actually see this product. The South African product is produced in Ekurhuleni. So we must then ensure that there's consistent, fresh, blue drop quality of water in order, for amarula to continue to be produced. Savannah, a beautiful I'm sorry that I'm making these examples. Well, I'm making this example, delegates, please focus. So, so, so the point that I'm trying to put across is that if we can't guarantee investors the security, the consistent water that is fresh, we'll lose that investment. And the cities will also compete. I know here we're about collaboration because we're talking infrastructure, but I sit around the table, then there's a sweat turning in Mid-Valley for Henneken is expanding. Now, while I still have industrial space, while I still have capabilities to keep that investment within the city of Ekurhuleni. So there's a greater role that as cities we have to play in order to ensure that we attract the investment, but we also keep the investment. So it's not just a Metropolis master plan. We've moved now away from the energy issues. Eskom load shedding is behind us. But what is it that we're doing to invest in the energy security of energy supply? We're building our own IPPs, ensure that we get investors to come and assist us to build renewable and alternative energies that is cheaper, that is also clean. And these are some of the conversations that when we came here, we really want to ensure that we appetize an investor to come closer to our city to ensure that they put the much needed money, because to power the industrial city, we currently use about 2,500 megawatts of electricity. That's quite, but we need consistent, because production lines must run 24 hours. And it's not just about that, but it's also about the cleanliness of our cities. It's also about, I said, we've got major roads. So if we don't invest on those capabilities today, if we don't invest in the safety of our cities, ensure that we deploy safe city, because the Metropolis, if you look along the R21 corridors, because of the master plan that we've developed, can actually see the logistic centers that are coming up, whether it's the DHL, whether it's DSV, whether it's take a lot. I mean, just for ensuring that there is, proper distribution, to support the economy. Just on we really want to appreciate this platform, because last year we were able to announce about 2.5 billion on our wastewater, program, which is currently at implementation through Infrastructure South Africa, and so really being here, there's results. There's results for us as city government. There's also results for yourself as delegates who are interested, who are taking up. You've got infrastructure projects. We've got financing. So there's real conversation that we can actually have. And of course, as I indicated, that we don't own airports, but we take interest of what happens around the airport, because the cargo of freight today, I mean, the OR Tambo takes about 85% of South African cargo. 85% goes through the OR Tambo International, and the balance goes to Durban. That's why I was saying we are learning every day. The first Africa Metropolis is in Ekurhuleni. So the balance then is Cape Town and also Durban. But that is over-saturated, because it's over 300,000 tons of cargo. So the OR Tambo can't take additional capacity. It means there must be conversation on the expansion, and that is why we keep our eye on the midfield cargo development, which is another 700,000 tons, which will take up the capacity to about 1 million. So what does it mean is that as a city, we must then pay attention on this cable to ensure that we are also ready in terms of bulk to actually support that growth, because a challenge for us as South Africans is that we are importing much more than we're exporting. So traffic is only coming into the country, and then all those flights, they leave empty. And that is the challenge, and the challenge that we must continue to look at to ensure that we strengthen manufacturing so that we're globally competitive. But we've got a role. How are we going to become globally competitive if we don't deal with the basics? And the basics is to deal with the electricity issue, ensure that there's reliability. That is why we've released over 75 IPPs. There are different stages. We've even ensured that we approve an escrow, to pick them up, to ensure that they're bankable, ensuring that there's less risk for an investor. And that we do because even if ESCOM has actually recovered, they've dealt with the issues of load shedding, we ensure that we've got enough power supply. We have to ensure that that electricity is also affordable. And I'm saying these are some of the conversation around locational advantage. Where are you positioned? Do you have just basic services? And those projects are there. I mean, for us to build these power stations, these substations, we need money, and the money that we do not have, because we charge our communities a fee, and they have to pay for services. And if the economy is struggling, it means we don't have enough money. So we must look closely at municipalities, and we're happy that National Treasury now, they are driving some reforms to actually ensure that all these revenue generation projects are ring-fenced, and we can actually get an investor to participate. And of course, once we deal with the basics, then we can have a conversation around innovation. Are we innovative enough as a country? But you can be as innovative as you can, but if city government, if ourselves as local government, we don't elevate, we don't plan appropriately to ensure that we support development, we will fall short. And that is why we are really excited to be here, to ensure that we contribute, we share some of the projects that we have, so that jointly together we can then drive meaningful and impactful development. I'm not sure, Program Director, if I touched on the issues that you expect us to touch on.
You have most certainly exceeded the brief. Thank you so much to you, Executive Mayor of the City of Ekurhuleni, Councillor Nkosi Ndiphile Xhakaza. Thank you so much for touching on the work that firstly Ekurhuleni is undertaken, but also for, I think, opening up the conversation in the room today to the extent of the definition of infrastructure, much to my opening remarks. And as well as once you've got diversified infrastructure, what it can then offer to the economy as a whole. But also then for touching, I think, on infrastructure that is absolutely essential for the survival of what you are building within this Erythropolis space, water security, safety around it, and how it obviously translates into everything from technology to how people are living in your city and are able to increase the capabilities that they have. And of course, for just showing us very practically, I think, examples in which a metro like Ekurhuleni does touch our lives, from being a gateway that allows import and exports and goods and services to arrive into the country, all the way through to the hydration of the nation. The hydration of the nation, from water all the way through to the national fuel for the upcoming summer season, as it were. But you touched on something that was really important at the end of your analysis of where you found yourselves as a metro, and one that had now potentially hit you know, the limits and constraints around what else it can carry in terms of what goes in and out. And you touched on the issue around the cost of that, but also how it is that you continue to deliver reliable infrastructure that becomes sustainable requirements for this economy. And I think with that, I'm going to go directly to your competitor from eThekwini, right here next to us, Dumi Mpisi. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Dumi Mpisi is the Senior Manager for Spatial and Land Use Planning at the Dube Trade Port Corporation in I should say, in Ilembe at King Shaka Airport. Well, no, not Ilembe. It's eThekwini. It's still part of eThekwini up until that border. Okay, thank you. So on the borders of Ilembe, it's still part of it. There was always a debate. All right. So she is the Spatial and Land Use Planning Manager. And much of what the mayor touched on in terms of activity, from air chefs, having a facility there to feed us on the plains, all the way through to fruit and vegetables in the trade zone being traded out of Dube Trade Port. Dumi and your team have to make provision for also some of the commercial growth imperatives, as well as some of the manufacturing capacity that has come from other countries in that particular space. Dumi, the Dube Trade Port, since its inception though, because it wasn't necessarily the first, but it was one that benefited from learnings around SEZ development, not just locally, but internationally, is one that has positioned itself as an innovation space. And an innovation space in terms of manufacturing, an innovation space in terms of the type of businesses the trade port tries to attract and retain within within that entire precinct as well. And so your master plan over the years of existence is one that has started to take into account that at some point the country will face capacity constraints. At some point the country will want to grow into more import and export trade, and different types of technology-based interests will come up, from data centers, as has been pointed out, all the way through to end production of goods like you have in the space. Tell me, for you, what though is the missing link between moving South Africa from a developing SEZ economy, because this is not just about logistics and trade. SEZs and aerotropolises are in fact knowledge economies, in the sense that in consolidating all this activity, they produce a lot of interesting statistics, activity, and dots that we must join. What is the missing gap between this knowledge economy and what we're being taught and we are seeing from the existence of the SEZ environment, all the way through to how do we now provide for future needs? And does innovation for you address the issues around the country's mandate for development, for growth and activity right now? Or do we need to go back to basics, as your counterpart from Ekurhuleni has stated it to us today, and say, let's really just focus on delivery, and perhaps then the SEZ model benefits from that?
Good afternoon, honorable mayors, city officials, and government official. I'd like to just observe all protocol. Moderator, I'll start just from the beginning. I'm a city planner, so I'm very passionate about development of cities. And I believe that just how the mayor touched on the fact that cities are the engine of economic growth. If cities die, the nations die. What compounds the matter in Africa is that we are an urbanizing continent. So a large number of people are moving from rural areas and coming into cities to search for economic opportunities. Were we ready for such an influx of population? No, we're not, judging by the state of how we have been able to handle our municipal infrastructure and so forth. So here comes in where we then now need to sit as partners in government together with the business society. When you look at the model of Aerotropolis, it just essentially says it's a city that is planned and anchored around an airport. Cities have always evolved or developed from a transport mode. First cities, you'd have found them around a railway infrastructure, found them around a river, found them around a road. Modern day cities are now sitting around an airport. Why? Because we are a globalized economy whereby import and export are the key drivers of economic growth. What you produce here might not necessarily be what you consume here, but it could be for the international market. China produces iPhones, but the IP is actually sitting in America, as an example. So that is how cities, and if we want to strategically locate ourselves as an African cities, we need to also move with what the global economy is doing. Develop these cities that are anchored around an airport. But it's not just only a function of an airport alone. It has to be multimodal. You've got to have your railway infrastructure properly working. You have to have your road networks properly working. 16 years ago, Mayor of Kampala, we were also greenfield at Durban International Airport. There was nothing before the World Cup. We had ambitions of moving the airport from the south of Durban to the north of Durban. We undertook that development as part of the 2010 infrastructure development, which coincided with our World Cup. We jointly formed a partnership with AXA, which is the South African Airports Company, and Dubai Trade Ports, ourselves being a provincial entity, so an SOE of the province. We master planned on how we are going to develop an airport city. That included us acknowledging that an airport city needs to have infrastructure, it needs to have the manufacturing base, not just any manufacturing, but high-value manufacturing that is export-orientated, that can actually deliver to the international markets. But beyond that, for a city to work, it needs to have people residing in it. So we had the concept of work, live, play within the city. Yes, we have not progressed as much as we would like to progress in as far as residential opportunities are concerned, but in the next upcoming 5 years, that's where our most investment is going to be focused on. To date, we've attracted billions and billions of FDIs. Recently, our most notable investment that we attracted was a manufacturing company from Thailand, which does a press plant for Toyota. It came in, it located in our facilities to the value of about 1.3 billion. This is just an example. Direct jobs that we've created about 13,000 jobs. And we're not counting the multiplier effect that are secondary jobs and businesses that could result as that. So the partnership comes in when you have a provincial government that has got an economic development mandate. Because what we have to realize is that we've got the spheres of government. You've got national, provincial, local. Local municipalities are troubled by issues of service delivery. And they are dealing with water, sanitation, they also have a mandate of local economic development and so forth. But what KZN was then able to do was to say, through the provincial government, let us form a company that is going to specifically look at developing the Aerotropolis. And later on along our journey, we were also then designated as an SEZ, which meant additional benefits to our investors in terms of corporate tax and so forth and so forth. So that partnership, was what enabled us. And when local government, in some cases, was busy with other priorities of service delivery, we could come in as a provincial entity and provide the required bulk infrastructure in order for us to enable this development of an Aerotropolis. Because what you need is, it's land, you need to prepare the land, give it the proper planning rights, environmental rights, give it bulk infrastructure, so that when investors come on board, it's a question of plug and play. They're not coming to raw land whereby they still need to get their EIAs, they still need to get their town planning approvals, they still need to get their bulk infrastructure, get electricity from somewhere. But what we provide at Dubai Trade Ports is state-of-the-art infrastructure, and which is also very much resilient in terms of its capacity to withstand some of the climatic conditions that we normally experience in KZN. Just a couple of years ago, we had lots of floods that exceeded 1 in 100-year, measurement. And at Dube Trade Port, you could actually sit and have infrastructure that was not developed and investors that could continue with their business, without any disturbance and so forth. Within that mandate that we have, we also are the only company that handles cargo. Currently, it's handled by private sectors in all the international airports in South Africa, but Dube Trade Port handles that cargo. And to date, since 2010, we've had 0 loss of cargo. We've been able to do that by having a dedicated cargo operation that is automated, and also we've assembled the different sectors of government, such as your SABs, your SARS, for customs, clearance, and so forth. So you get everything in-house. And by so doing, we've been able to efficiently, handle our cargo and have reliability from, developers and so forth. So I would park at that particular point, Lynette. Thanks.
And I think back to my opening shot at you, Dumi, around it and what you have developed at Dube Trade Port and into innovation. Dube Trade Port invested quite a lot in terms of knowledge and has replicated at a local standard much of what some of the global best practice and benchmarks are in terms of creating some of that plug-and-play modulables around some of your systems and your processes. Do you think the decision to take a future-first approach to the SEZ and where it currently is today against the pressures and the urgencies of a developing state and a society around you has been the best bet? Or would you still, as an organization and as a vehicle for that type of transformational economic change, still continue on the path that was initially part of that master plan to immediately go straight for, shall I call it the big blue picture of what these could do and catalyze for South Africa's economy?
Lynette, as you've indicated, when we started off the project, we had to go globally to benchmark and get a full understanding of what do we mean by an aerotropolis city. We went and visited the cities such as Amsterdam, which, are the pioneers in this space. We learned from the Delft University on how an aerotropolis actually functions and works. And what becomes key is that manufacturing is the base of any growing or developing nation. If we don't get manufacturing in place, we will never get to a position of solving the unemployment rates that we have as a country of about 30% and above. So this Big Bang theory of us having the aerotropolis, wanting to replicate what the first world country is doing, but the beauty of it is that it has manufacturing as the underlying and foundational principle, so that it could create those employment opportunity, facilitate export, and with manufacturing comes innovation. Because that's where innovation actually comes. It's from manufacturing. You can never get as much innovation from the service sector economy. Neither can you do so from the agrarian economy. So through all of those collaboration, we then developed this master plan. It's got various lead initiatives, we call them. They're basically programs, and within those programs are projects. Ours is a 50-year master plan, Mayor. I heard yours is 30 years. So it must be coming to an end quite soon. At least we still have time. Yes, no, I'll park at that point, Lynn. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dumi, for bringing that final point in particular to the fore. And I'm going to turn around, and at some point we're going to have to swap seats with you as well, just so that, particularly people on the side of the room have a better view of you, Charmaine. Next to me, ladies and gentlemen, is the Senior Investment Officer of the New Development Bank, Ms. Charmaine Akazamula. Now, some of you have heard about the New Development Bank, but I hope she will just touch a little bit on what they have been up to since inception, especially because they're perhaps one of the newer DFIs from a Pan-African perspective that have entered the infrastructure development and making sure that we can bring to ground some of the projects that you will see as part of the 2-3 days that we are together here at SIDSSA. Now, Charmaine, one of the things that I think the whole panel has ultimately come to acknowledge here is that we can't entrepreneur our way out of inequality and out of dismal service delivery and building a country, as it were. And somewhere at the base of all of this must be capability, whether that capability is manufacturing capability, it's connectivity, it's skills development and education, and it's obviously just making sure that we have the necessary bulk infrastructure, as it were, safe, smart spaces to create these bankable assets that banks like yourselves are looking for. Now, the financial services market, whether they exist in the public realm or they exist in the private realm, they are local or diversified and offshore around the world. One of the ongoing challenges that you find in your work is that whether it is individual developers, it is SEZs, much like our counterparts on the panel bring to you, it is countries, it is local governments bring projects to you, but you're finding against your measures and metrics that they're not bankable. And I know the financial services market has had to work quite a lot in refining products, in refining what traditional terms and term sheets have looked like to be responsive to what's actually happening in the real world around you and against some of the challenges that a society faces in order to find each other and this middle ground related to then the cost of financing this all important infrastructure today. And I think my question really to you goes back to that as part of this is, can you unpack for us the New Development Bank's journey in particular, and maybe some of your practical examples around how you as a bank have had to work around the difference between what is public good infrastructure versus what you define as a commercially bankable asset as a banker, because how a mayor allocates risk in line and in responsible to his citizenship and constituencies, and how you allocate risk as a banker are also completely different margins to look at. And also then how then the mobilization of that capital works, particularly when you as a bank have to then work with multi-layered and multifaceted environments such as government, where there's inflows from money coming from a national treasury through various municipal infrastructure programs, much like we do in South Africa, like MISA, etc. The development banks also have their own programs, but then they're also coming to you directly and asking for you for money in that particular environment. Can you give us a bit of a picture of what and how that has checkered or bettered the development pipeline that you're working with from the people who are ultimately going to help us fund what society needs today?
Thank you, Lynette.
Thanks, Charmaine. Is your microphone on? Yeah, just speak into it.
Okay.
It should be fine.
Good afternoon, honorable mayors, city officials, ladies and gentlemen. So just to give you a brief introduction into the New Development Bank, some of you may have heard of the bank, others not. Some may have heard of BRICS Bank. It is one and the same. We are BRICS Bank. Our official name is the New Development Bank. We have been in operation now for about 10 years, and we started off supporting the BRICS countries, but the membership of the bank has grown. We are now at 11 countries, including 2 in Africa, being Egypt and Algeria. We are continuing to expand our membership and looking at growing in Southern Africa as well. So soon, hopefully, we'll have additional Southern African member countries. So we finance infrastructure for these member countries. The bulk of our operations is directed at government, so we support public infrastructure. We do also play in the private sector as well, but a smaller portion of our portfolio is then directed to private sector. In South Africa, we've worked with the National Treasury, like you mentioned. We've worked with state-owned companies, and we're continuing to support those entities. We've also branched into municipal programs and are continuing to explore ways in which we can work directly with municipalities. So with regards to going from airport to an aerotropolis, essentially it's not a question of scale, it's rather a shift in function. So for lenders as well, that means a shift in the investment question. It's not about can a terminal be built, can cargo capacity be built, but rather will the entire trade value become more competitive. So we would be looking at, for example, how are we maximizing that competitiveness when we invest in a project like this. For example, can exporters get to the airport reliably? Can cargo cross the border or clear customs digitally, predictably? We also would place much emphasis in digitalization. Obviously, for reasons already mentioned, it's quite important. But in addition to just going digital, it should not be just another layer on top of an analog system. Ideally, if you're looking at regional integration, what you want to see is that, you know, countries are able to share information. Because, for example, currently, probably in clearing customs, people are required to submit the same information over and over and to different entities. So if the systems are not operating together and they're not sharing the same information, the efficiency still remains. So in terms of financing models that we've seen work in other jurisdictions, not yet in South Africa, we have financed SEZs. We've also financed airports that were largely centered around tourism. And the models that we've seen work when you're approaching airports from that perspective is that you should not look at the entire system as one, at least from a financing perspective, but rather break it up into public goods and obviously assets that are bankable. And we would then, together with the sovereign, be able to finance public goods, so things like bulk infrastructure, utilities, road and rail connectivity is when we come in with the support. SEZs are also able to just strengthen the whole financing model by providing a platform where approvals are coordinated and you have appropriate incentives. And when looking at SEZ, the presence of an anchor user also strengthens confidence for the financiers that there is actually demand for the infrastructure and there is sustainable commercial viability for the infrastructure. Allocation between public sector, you're very correct in highlighting the importance of appropriate risk allocation because that will either make or break the transaction. It has to go to the party that is best able to manage that risk. Instruments such as blended finance and guarantees can be used to strengthen the structure, but they definitely are not a tool for masking lack of demand or unclear roles and responsibility amongst the various entities that are involved. You're quite correct in pointing out that a lot of stakeholders are needed to make it work. And what we've seen work the best is, like I mentioned before, taking a phased approach that is aligned to actual commercial demand. In taking that phased approach, it enables you to then also understand where your market is going, have that capacity to do the proper risk allocation, have that capacity to involve many stakeholders. There are many providers of finance. It is not just development institution or commercial lenders. And a precinct like this requires everybody to work together. And that coordination is quite important. So as the new development bank and the development finance world in general, we do generally work together. We are open to coordinating with other lenders. We are open to co-financing with other lenders. And our play in the public and private sector allows us to not necessarily play the coordination role. Coordination role definitely needs to lie with the relevant stakeholders, but that does give us sight on both ends of the spectrum, and it allows us to be able to marry the two and bring some level of coordinated into the overall structure of it. In addition to giving just ordinary loans, we do also give guarantees as well. So we are able to play at various parts of the chain in terms of the product offering that we have.
So, Charmaine, just off the back of that, and I think we need to close, I'm getting the signals from the door, but I don't want to close without asking some important questions around financing, because I know it's the heartbeat of this as well. And if I take it back to the two mayors in particular, against the outline that has been given to us by Charmaine today, especially on the issue of risk allocation and who becomes the most accountable person for allocating that capital, managing it, and making sure you deliver on time. What has been your biggest challenge, and are you the right people to place it at, or should you have entities like an SEZ and a Dubai Trade Port that are built into your structures that manage these catalytic projects in a commercial manner as opposed to one that's related to public service and local government administration?
Just take this one, Mayor.
No, thank you very much. I think it's a conversation that was seized with, as South Africans, municipalities looked at, in fact, the entire public service very closely in terms of the ability to deliver projects and deliver them on time. And I think the conversation has always been about whether we have the right capacity to plan and also to implement these projects. And conversations have, and suggestions, I mean, we've explored, DBSA, for instance, as an implementing agent for some of our projects. Some of the governance lapses that we're battling with these days, it's not just some of the Madlanga revelations. There's also some regress, in terms of audit. But when you look closely, who are some of the responsible guys that have actually let us down? I mean, the model of how we deliver projects, we always also rely on the private sector to play a biggest role. But we have trust in the new reforms that ring fence certain and ensure that there's one center for accountability. It means really public service is looking at how we're structured so that we ensure that we structured to be able to deliver optimally on these projects. And we are also structured so that there is a greater transparency. A finance partner is able to look closely and assess the bankability of projects and be able to evaluate the risk profile. And that's why when I was making my opening remarks, I also said we've now as councils even approved an escrow account. Escrow account, I'm sure the Standard Bank, they will attest to it because they work with us, which is an instrument that is designed to minimize the risk, for investors. I mean, I had a problem. I had to be convinced to actually approve this instrument because for every project there must be some risk, that you take. While we want to de-risk some of these projects as far as possible, but the risk exposure must not, because we have a responsibility to ensure sustainability of municipalities.
Yes.
So whatever that we do must always try and balance these two. So, but I'm saying there's always that conversation, and it's not because in 2 months we're going to elections. It's not just about that, but there's always a
bigger
greater
picture.
scrutiny to say,
Yes.
the capacity of municipalities to deliver, projects, to deliver on time, but also the risk, profiling, and do we have enough instruments that we're putting in place to ensure that we attract, funding for projects, because that's what we need, and that's what we were here about, to actually assure the delegates, those who've got the money on,
Yes.
so that they can then have trust that they can put up the necessary finance for us to fund the development. I'm
Thank
not sure
you.
if I came closer
Thank
to.
you.
Yeah.
If I can just, ladies and gentlemen, I'm now getting a hard close on this panel. And if I can just invite to the stage, and I'm going to invite him to the podium because he does not have a mic and a seat with us, Councillor Tandukolo Kalipa. He's the executive mayor, ladies and gentlemen, of the Machabeng local municipality right here in South Africa. And I asked him to just come as one of the, not the mega metros that perhaps is a big airport such as this. There are learnings, and there's also plans underfoot in those regions for how they continue with the same type of instruments and projects to expand economic hubs. And I'd like him just to give us a closing word based on what he's heard, as what he would take as what he would take. I'm going to ask him to the lectern, please. If he can just come, because there is a microphone at the lectern. No, stay. I've asked him to go to the podium because there's a microphone for him. He's giving us our closing word. Thank you. Just if he can give us a summary of some of his key priorities that he now takes back to his council, to his region, on what he has heard, as what does he prioritize as they continue their growth and expansion pipeline?
Thank you very much, Program Director. Machabeng municipality is one of the municipalities in the Free State, in Falcom, which is a mining town. In the past, employed more than 200,000 people across the continent, Malawi, Mozambique, Lesotho, and then other provinces, your Eastern Cape. Most of the people, they were from those areas were working in Machabeng. And in the past 20 years, we've lost more than 150,000 workers because of the decline of the gold in our area. And we thought that we're not just going to sit, not do anything. Program Director, we develop our 2050 vision, which is that we work very close with the University of Cape Town. And we have now developed a plan how to implement that vision. And our priority was your infrastructure, which is in the last 4 years. You hear the minister announcing that Machabeng have now a Pengabul project, which is we have now mobilized more than 6.8 billion. And this is a project. The 4.4 billion is the infrastructure to fix your pump station and your sewer treatment plant. Because there is no investor that will come to your area and invest if your capacity of your infrastructure is not stable. So they will always want to know about your infrastructure capability. Mayor, we lose now if you deal with issues of your water, which is also part of your infrastructure program projects, we've been losing more than 50% of our water because of your water leakages. And the project now that the minister has just announced of 2.4 billion, working with some consultants, is going to fix that for the next 5 years. We now have a new gold in our area, which is your gas. And there is no province that have that. We are competing with 20 countries in the world. And that gas is going to be with us for the next 150 years. So we're supposed now to invest, put our sector plans to make sure that we are ready for that investment in our area. Our mayor, he was talking about the OR Tambo airport, your cargo airport. We also, as Machabeng, we have now ventured to that space. And there are already some investors who have already have an interest on the cargo, and already those investors, they have committed more than 15 billion, which is they are going to create during construction 12,000 jobs. And these are investments that they have already done that. If you look on the energy program director, there are more than 15 billion investment in Machabeng is under construction. In the last investment conference of the president, and there was an announcement of Mulilo that they have already on the Petri invested 5 billion, and they have already taken a decision now to invest another 5 billion in Machabeng. So city to city, because we can't work in silos. That must be very clear that it's important that we must strengthen that relationship with city to city. And learn, not go to Dubai and all other, just learn from next door to our own cities. How they have managed to deal with all these challenges of economic development. Because our view that if you focus in the past, local government was always about water, about cleaning streets, fixing potholes. And that is what is in the public domain. They don't know that municipalities have a responsibility, program direct, to focus on the investment. Because investment does not happen in Pretoria, happen in the local. And there's no president that stay in Pretoria, in Union Building, or a premier. Everybody goes stay in a city. So we must now focus in our office as just one of the example program director. We appointed a head of infrastructure and investment in our own office to make sure that in the office of the executive mayor, we lead by example on issues of investment. Not take those issues and delegate to some municipal manager and LED. Build that internal capacity. And the minister was talking about the internal capacity. We've appointed a number of engineers, and we are still looking for a number of engineers. Because our view that if we don't have capacity in our institution, because the state has been weakened, and you can hear even the message is about private investment, not building the capacity of the state. In our view, we need to balance that, build, partner with private sector, but at the same time, program director, build the capacity of the state, that the state must have capacity to some of these projects to monitor, but at the same time to implement, because some of the projects that are done now are done by Val Central, which is appointed by the Department of Water and Sanitation. And then the DPSA, they have also assisted us, Infrastructure South Africa, which is an entity of the state that must be supported and that must be built to have that capacity to implement this project. And in our view, program director, once all these things are done, then the job opportunities, job creation, then the numbers of the state South Africa don't, then they're going to, there is going to be a positive report that from state South Africa that there's new money. As long there's no new money that come to the city, there will never be job opportunities. So we can have all this investment, but if there's no new money that come, And we are happy with all what the work is done by our President and the Minister of Infrastructure to deal with new money in our cities. Then our cities are going to fly the program director. So we are confident with the work that we've done for the past 4 years and with the work that we'll be doing through our vision of 2050. We don't plan around individual. We must put systems because leaders come and go, but the system remain. It's what is important when you build systems. Let's not build around personalities. Let's focus about building systems, which is systems are going to be there even when some of us we are no longer there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the Executive Mayor of Matter Bay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience with us this afternoon. Thank you for your patience with us this afternoon and your attention, of course, for this panel. A round of applause for our panel guests. And I think our takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, is that this is more than a built environment and an infrastructure question, but it's very much around the patterns, the dots, the currency, the people, as well as the resources we connect around it that will create true network connectivity and economic activity for our region, our country, and the African continent as a whole. We'll be now going through to our next panel, and I'm going to relieve my panel guests from the stage. Thank you very much. And our next panel will, interestingly enough, then take a look at the ports. So we have gone and from taking flight to landing at the shores of our various countries, ladies and gentlemen. And what I hope it will allow us to do is continue some of the critical conversation pieces that